Hi everyone, so this is the round 6 wrap up for the simulation. So we're done with the simulation and we could see that this is the net profits per team, and that where we started out with about 50 million net profits on average, by the end of the simulation some teams were reaching $395 million of profit and $391 million of profit as the two top teams, and then we have 321, 318. So anybody getting close to over 250 million in profits did very well. So that's what this simulation was about. That's what business is about in finance, is maximizing shareholders' wealth. And to do that, you have to increase net profits. So a number of teams were able to do that quite successfully. If we look at points per team, we can see that a lot of teams started out very strongly in round 1. And that's because you're taking over a company that was mismanaged and you were correcting things. So it was easy to get a lot of points in round 1, but now, so you're competing against bad managers and then good managers, which is yourself, so it's easy to, on a year-over-year basis, get those points. But then as you moved forward, you see that it was a lot more difficult, and you could see that to get over 500 points a round, it was very difficult for a lot of teams. And if you did get over 500 points a round on average, you did over 3,000 points, which is over a 90 percentile of performance. But you can see here a lot of teams were able to do well relatively most rounds and get over the 2,500 points needed. Is it 2,500 points? Let me check that. Let's see here. You need to score over 2,600 points to get the full 30 points, and between 2,200 and 2,599 to get 25 of the 30 points. You need to score over 2,600 points. Okay, and many teams were able to do that, which we'll check out later. Okay, so stock price, we see that we have a new, Brandon's Auto is a new stock price leader here at 221, and he was able to come up from behind and in the last 2 rounds claim the first place of stock price. We have one company here that increased, everybody, if you see here, everybody increased quite dramatically in stock price. And for the last round, I think this team here, RMJM, increased the most as far as increasing stock price for the round. But the top 4 would be Kennedy, Maris, YYJ, and Brandon's Autos are the top 4 in stock price. And then in sales per team, we see that a number of companies were, these companies who were flat submitted no results. And these are teams actually that have nobody's in these teams. They were abandoned. So that could be why, that's why they're forced forward, because there's no one there to do anything. In the top, we had a leader, this was the leader in sales. And this company did great in sales, but they weren't able to translate that into stock price or profits as far as the number 1 position. They did well, but sales are important, but the amount of sales that convert into profit are more important. So, you definitely need sales to have profits, but you want your profit margins to be high in those sales. So we're seeing a lot of the same teams here at the high. So this is really where you want to be in sales if you forecast it accurately. Anybody below this didn't forecast too well. And we have anywhere from, JJ had, Maris and JJ have 1.1 billion in sales all the way up to 1.2 billion in sales. So it's about $150 million difference between, the top and bottom team in this grouping in sales. Okay, so if we look at earnings per share, we see that Brandon's Autos had the highest earnings per share, which was terrific. It means they had in earnings per share, you're looking at per share. So if Brandon Autos were aggressive in buying back their stock early on, that really gave them an advantage. And we had this team is very impressive here. If you look at Maris, they came out from in the middle, performing in the middle of the pack, to getting into 3rd place in earnings per share. And of course, we have YYJ in 2nd place, with RMJM sprinting into 4th place for the last round, which is a really great performance here. And then if we go, this is just the chart. So if we look at the overall, the current round points, we could see that we have teams doing relatively well. Now these last 2 teams here there's no one, some of these teams there's nobody in the team. So that could explain why they're not doing well. And that's just a factor of students who joined the class early and then dropped the class and left these teams abandoned. So some teams are abandoned. Okay, so gross profit, we had the leader in gross profit, Maris Corporation at 71%. So for every dollar they sold, 71 cents was the profit, and that's a 90 percentile rank. And these percentile ranks are based against 5,000 other teams in the who have played the simulation in the last 2 years. So and if you scored over 50%, you're doing pretty well on gross profit. But remember that we started at 40%. So if you're in the 40 percentile, that's pretty low compared to what you could achieve. So okay, so stock price, of course, we have Brandon Auto's high in stock price and return on earnings. RMJM Auto is the highest return on earnings. And that's really important ratio, because that means the equity that shareholders put into the company, and you're giving them the highest return on the equity you put into the company. Okay, so total points, we have Brandon's Auto has total points, and they had the most profits and the most earnings per share, so they should really have the highest points, and they scored better than 91% of the companies that played this simulation, 5,000 companies across the nation. So they did better than 4,555 teams out of 5,000 in total points. So that was astonishing. So we have these teams, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams that scored over 2,600 and getting the full credit for the simulation. And then we have a number of teams that are close, doing well, getting a significant amount of points, and some teams that didn't do as well, getting less points. And again, I did look over the reflective observations, and if I felt that your reflective observations were really good, there were some extra credit points assigned. Okay, so operating profits are high, earnings per share, again, we know that we talked about this in the chart. Return on assets, this means how efficiently you use your assets. So we had a three-way tie between three companies with their asset utilization. And then the net profit margin, we had 35, 33, and 27 as the top three. Again, Maris, Brandon, and RMJM Autos. And then the revenues per share, it's a different layout for the sales revenues per share. So the top revenues per share weren't the top profits. But it's good they had a lot of sales, but they needed to convert those more into profits. But to get top sales, sometimes you have to have an auto with better features and have an auto with more advertising and a lower price. So it makes sense that if you have the top sales, you may not have the top profits because you made a car everybody wanted, but may not have been the most profitable car. All right. Total asset turnover, how you use your assets in conjunction to your profits. So these are all, and if you remember, these are all things that we studied in class, in a ratio and financial analysis in the class. So this is why this is a good reinforcement of a lot of what we did in the course as far as reinforcing financial analysis, financial ratio analysis, financial statements, and hopefully drawing you a little bit closer to understanding the learning goals of this class. So I think this, and also give you a perspective of how it is to financially run a company. So in future chapters, we're going to talk about cost of capital, capital budgeting cash flow techniques. You'll have a better understanding of those topics because you have now experience running a simulated company. Okay, so that's my 10-minute wrap-up of the simulation, and congratulations to those teams that scored over 2,600 points. You really did very, very well in the simulation. I'm very impressed. And to all the teams that participated, I think just participating, you learned something, and that's a good thing. Okay, take care.